Hi. In this video, this video is gonna be dedicated for people who have uh, Steam ID. So people who have already registered to be a partner, a Steam partner, and have an app ID. If you don't have that, you can follow along because we cover some concepts that are interesting, but you're gonna still stick to the flow of creating the user that we did in the previous video. For this one, it's only like if you have a Steam app ID, we can actually call Steam API and ask them for the user information instead of having the user enter its own information himself. This video is a little bit more complicated. It was long. It is long, and there's a lot of fail point that can happen. I fix the majority of it. Usually I put a little text whenever the error happened, but in the end, I just fix a bunch of them in a row. So if it's not working until the end, don't worry about it. It should work when we fixed all of this. Just a couple reminder, you have to have Steam open for the Unity to kind of be able to communicate with Steam, for your project to be able to communicate with Steam. Every time you change just the Steam app ID in the text file, you need to restart Unity. So yeah, make sure otherwise that you follow. If you need help, because as I said, this is a pretty complicated video, you can go into our Discord channel. The link is in the YouTube channel banner. So there in the help section, make sure you check first if the question hasn't already been asked, but otherwise you can just ask your question there and I'll make sure to help you. So yeah, let's get started. First thing first, to accomplish that, we're going to need a web API key. So you're going to come here to the partner.steamgames.com. It requires you to already have signed up as a partner, been approved and everything. So make sure you did that. Now we're going to go into View Dashboard. It's going to bring you to your dashboard, and then you're going to go into Manage Groups. In Manage Groups, you're going to select a group. Me, I have a couple of groups, but yours should be at least everyone. So you can select that. And then in here, you're going to have a Create Web API Key. So you're going to create that. It's going to create you a Web API Key, and you're going to use this to connect and ask Steam for the user information. So we're going to go ahead and store that into our Visual Studio Code project. While we're here also, we're going to go and go into the dashboard, and you're going to look at your app, and you're going to make sure you note that app ID because we're also going to need it to communicate with the Steam API. So here, you're going to go to your .env file, and we're going to add two environment variable that are going to be used to identify with Steam. So Steam API key, which here you're going to paste your actual API key that you noted before. And here we're going to go with Steam app ID. And here you're going to note, you're going to paste, not in string, but just the number of the Steam app ID. So with this information, we're going to be able to communicate with Steam API. Okay, now that we have that, we're going to create our controller. So let's go in here and create a folder, controllers. Remember, for controllers to be recognized as a namespace, we need init.py in it. So let's go and create a new file, __init__.py. Here it is. Now we can create our file, login_controller.py. So controllers are part of a pattern called MVC. I've already explained it in the previous series, but if you haven't followed that series, I'm just going to explain it again. MVC stands for Model View Controller. So the model represents your data representation, which in our case like this, a player, a class that is purely just the data. Controller are the access point to your application. They do the link between the view and the models. So in here, here, when we do we manipulate the data and then we output a view, this is the job of the controller. And then you have, sorry, and you have the view. The view is the the representation of the data that you send back to the client. So in our case, it's JSON. So we don't have a particular view folder, but because we return JSON. But at some point you could have it, just so that you hide some field from the model and you don't return the model directly. Sometimes you want to hide some information. So you would have a view, and instead of JSONify the player, you would create a view here and then return that view. But we're adding another layer. So we're doing MVCS. So the S at the end stands for service. That's where we're going to encapsulate all the business logic of our application. So let's start with that. So we're going to create the login controller. So we're going to go here, login controller. So you're going to see this new syntax. So a blueprint, it's kind of a namespace. It declares a controller. So blueprint, and we're going to say login controller, and then underscore name. So that's how you declare a controller or a blueprint. So blueprint doesn't exist. We're going to have to import it from Flask, import blueprint. There we go. And now we can declare our route. So declaring a route is going to be like pretty similar to this, and except this one was a get route where you can have like parameter in the URL. In our case, it's going to be a post. If you remember the verbs, post is whenever you want to create something. Get is to just get something. Post is to create something. So in our case, usually with a login route, you would create what we call an authentication token. So either GWT or something else. We're not going to go as far to create that token in this video, but that's why usually login controllers are posts. Also, in our case, if the player doesn't exist, it's the first time he's launching the game through Steam, we're going to create his user. So post is definitely the way to go here. So let's go for login controller and dot route right here, and then we're going to specify the routes. So it's going to be /login/Steam. Then what we have to do here is say which methods it actually used. So the method is the HTTP verb. So this is a list, and it's all the verbs that this endpoint handles. For us, it's only a post. So we're just going to say post. So there you go. We can now define our route. So login Steam. And then what we need from from the client, what the client is going to send us, it's called a session ticket. So a session ticket. So that's what Steam gives you whenever they represent your identification with Steam. So what we're going to do is we're going to send it to the backend, and the backend is going to use this, call the API, and say, hey, is this a valid ticket? If yes, give me back the user information. I need it. So he's in my game right now, so I need it. Okay, so what we're going to do here is request.form.get, and then we're going to get the session ticket. There you go. So request.form is one way of sending post information, but now you see it's not imported, but we can import it here. It's part of the Flask, so we're just going to import it like this. There you go. We're going to initialize our player to none, and then we're going to say if session ticket, so that means like we actually got something into this. We're going to do Steam ID equals SteamService, which is something we're going to create after .login, and then we're going to pass him the session ticket. Okay, so now this is going to return to us Steam ID. With that, we can actually use our model object. So we're going to have to import it. And we're going to say Steam ID equals Steam ID. And we're just going to say return me the first one because we don't need it to be an array. There's supposed to be only one person with the Steam ID in our database. So here, what we're going to do, we're going to say from models.players import player. There you go. And for Steam login, we're going to create it a little bit after. And in here, if player is none, that means like the player is not in our database, then we're going to create it. So gamer tag, we want the gamer tag. So we're going to go SteamService.get player gamer tag. and we're going to pass him the Steam ID that we just received. And then we're going to create that player. So player Steam ID equals Steam ID, and gamer tag equals gamer tag. And then we're going to do that player.save. And then after that, when it's all said and done, we're always going to have a player. So what we're going to do is we're going to return JSONify of player. So JSONify still needs to be imported here. JSONify. And there we go. We are going to have here login controller. Now, the only thing we have to do is to register him in our app.py here. So here we can actually register Blueprint. So let's go in here and we're going to say app.register Blueprint, and we're going to say login controller that we are going to import from, let's import it right before, from controller, controllers.login controller, import login controller. Here we go. And now it's all registered. So this tells the app that there's a login controller right here. Yeah. So that way he can route our, if someone posts something to login Steam, he can execute this code. All right, now we're going to go ahead and do the Steam service. So the same way we did our controller folder, we're going to do a new folder. Sorry, not inside. Let's click outside of that and call it services. Same thing, to be recognized as a namespace, we need that init.py. So let's go and create a new file, init__py. There you go. So that's going to be a namespace now. And we're going to create a new file called steam_service.py. So that's going to store all our function that communicate with Steam. So we're going to go and say define our login function, right? Yeah, login function. So login, and this take a Steam ticket. And we need to get our information first from the .env file. So what we're going to do is Steam API key is going to equal to get env. So we're going to need to import OS. Yeah, and then we're going to do that get env, and we're going to get our Steam API key. Then we're going to get our Steam app ID, which is going to be the OS get env, and then Steam app ID. There we go. So this is going to be needed for us to communicate. Now let's do the params here. So params, those are all the parameters we're going to send to Steam. So this is going to be an object. First one is going to be ticket, and it's going to be the Steam ticket. There we go. App ID, which is going to be, you guessed it, the Steam app ID. And then it wants, a parameter called key, which is going to be also the Steam API key. In fact, this one, we're just going to make sure that it's an int. So we're going to do int like this, just to make sure, just in case like it wasn't. And then here we go. So the ticket is the Steam ticket, the app ID is the Steam app ID, and the key is your API key. So with that, we can actually make the call. So response. So first, we're going to import the names, the module for that. So import request, and then we're going to do response equal request dot. It's a get. So you recognize here the verbs. So request allows you to do get, post, delete, put, and there's a couple of other verbs we didn't see, like get, head, patch is there, but what we need is get. So the URL you want to enter is this one. So http partner.steamapi.com, the Steam user auth, and the authentication user ticket.v1. So if you're asking yourself where I got that URL or where you can figure out like everything you can call on Steam API, you can Google Steamworks Web API. It's going to give you like all the interface you can call. So you can see some familiar one here. The one we're using is actually Steam user auth. You have kind of a small description, but they're not the most descriptive. Like they could be better. But if you go in iSteam user auth, the description is still here, but you have authenticate user tickets. That's the endpoint you can call for that on that interface. So what we're going to call is authenticate user ticket because we have a key, an app ID, and a ticket. You can see also which parameters are required. So this one, it says it's required, but it's not actually. We're not going to use it. It explained here that it's actually optional. It depends on how you get the ticket. So for us, since this is what we're going to need to pass. So the key, the app ID, and the ticket. So yeah, this is where you would find all the endpoint you're going to be able to call on the Steam Web API. Now back in Visual Studio, so we're going to call this, and here we're going to pass him the params that we just created, so params, and here we should get a response. So the usual way to check if an HTTP call has worked is to check the status code. So we're going to say if response.status code equals 200. 200 means okay, so it means everything went fine. I was able to handle the request and I gave you a response. So the response is JSON, so we're gonna go and get that JSON as an object. So that JSON is gonna it's actually gonna give us a JSON object. With that, we can check if the key response is in that JSON. So JSON.keys. If it is, that means we got a response. So we can say that the data is equal to JSON, access that response, and then access params, which is what they gave us. So we're going to return data Steam ID. Steam ID. We're going to put a breakpoint here because whenever we test this, we want it to break here so that we can actually, like, I can show you what the response is like. And in the case where we didn't succeed, we didn't get a response, we're going to return none. That way, when we are in our LoginController, here, if the Steam ID is none, then we're not going to find a player, and then we're going to return an empty object. Okay, so I think we are ready to actually import this. So let's go in here from services .steam service import Steam service. There you go. That Steam service. No, in fact, no, that's not what we need to do. In fact, we need to import that service, but we don't have, it's not like, it's a, as Steam service, because this one is not, so it's going to be import service.steamService as Steam service. There you go. So that's how you're going to import the service. So now we have it right here, and we can call the login. We can't call the get player gamer tag right now because that function doesn't exist yet, but we're going to create it. So let's go back to our Steam service. And it's going to be pretty similar, like we're calling another Steam endpoint API. So get player gamer tag. Then we need the Steam ID, which is going to be hopefully the things that we get from this call. And then we're going to go Steam API key equals os.getEnv, and then Steam API key. We're always going to need that API key for every call we make. And then what we want to do, we want to get information on a specific user. So in our params here, what we're going to say is that endpoint here, that particular endpoint needs the key, which the key is the Steam API key. So Steam API key, and it needs the Steam IDs of the user you want to know about. In our case, we just want to know about a single user, which is the Steam ID. So that's perfect. Response equal request dot get. It's another get. The URL is going to be this one. Okay, so partner api.com iSteamUser this time, not iSteamUser auth, and get player summaries v2, and then we're going to pass our params. Params equals params. Oops, params. There you go. And this is going to be pretty similar. So we're just going to copy paste this here. And then here, response in JSON key. So that's always going to be true if there is, but this is what's going to change. So we're going to say if players in JSON response dot keys. So there's another layer in the JSON format. And then here we're going to say data equals JSON response, and then players, and then 0, because we only passed one Steam ID, so we're expecting only one user back, because the user ID is the Steam ID is unique. So return and data, and then we can go persona name, which is the name in their API how they store the gamer tag. So now we're gonna say return an empty string if the call didn't work, so that we get just an empty player tag. So if we go back into our login, here it is. So we can now get that player tag, and then with that player tag we're gonna create the user, and then we're gonna save it. Yeah, so let's go. We're gonna be able to soon test this. All right, now back on Unity, on the Unity project in our client network manager, before we even start to connect to a server and set up our network manager, what we want to do is we want to connect to the backend. So what we're going to do is we're expecting him to return to us a player, but it's a nullable possibly there's nothing, the player is not valid. So it shouldn't, but let's take that precaution, make it nullable. Connect to a backend. Okay, so that's what we're gonna do, and we're gonna create that method here. So private async task player connect to backend, and here what we actually want to do when we connect to the backend is we're gonna check if Steam manager dot initialize, because we need the Steam library to be initialized, the Steam SDK to be initialized, so that we can ask for that token. The token is given to us in a byte. So byte ticket equals new byte, and we're gonna set it to 124, which should be enough place for that token. So we're gonna need to import system.byte. So let's do this. It imported. Oh, it's in system, so that's fine. So there you go. Uint session ticket size, which is going to be given to us, and then we're going to use auth ticket, which is the authentication ticket, ticket request, equal Steam user dot get auth session ticket. You need to pass him a byte buffer, so ticket, and then the max size that we put, which is 124, and out the session ticket size. Okay. Now what we want to do is we need to make sure that that ticket only contains the ticket and no empty spaces. So now we put a number here that is larger than what a ticket should be, but we're going to need to resize our ticket to fit with that session size that was given. So we're going to say array.resize. The reference is the ticket, and then we're going to say as an int session ticket size. So that's the size of that array needs to be. And it was returned by the call to get at session, because they know how long the ticket is, so they tell us. Now, we need to make it a hex string. So equals bit converter dot toString, and then you say ticket. And then we have to replace that character by an empty space. So by nothing. We remove that character because we don't need it for a backend to send it to backend. So we're gonna say return await game services, yeah, dot login player, and then we're gonna pass that X, and then this is gonna be actually the call to the backend, and if the Steam is not initialized, we're just gonna return null here. Here we go. So that login player is the next thing we're gonna create. In fact, there's a small mistake here. We're gonna create a new class in our game services. It's gonna be login service. Okay, so that login service is gonna have that login player. So let's go ahead and create this login service like this. So right here, I'm not gonna add it to this yet. And what we want to is we want to have public play task async task player. So we're gonna need to import that right here, and in fact it has to be static also, static async task player, and then we're gonna call it login player. It takes a string, which is the session ticket. There it is. And then we'll want to do a call to our backend to make sure that we have that we log in our user. So string response, because it's going to be JSON, await server request dot get request. No, it's not a get request. Sorry, it's a post. It's a post request, which we're gonna do in a minute here. We're gonna pass it our post login player and our data. Okay, so we're gonna create this. So for the data, it's gonna be a dictionary of string data. Just gonna be a new dictionary. There you go. In this, we're gonna add our session ticket, which is the parameter that the backend is expecting, and it's going to be our session ticket, which is a string. So that's perfect. So that data is taken care of. For the post login, we're just going to need to here define some things that we're gonna take that one here because it's the same. Let's go to login service and put it here, and we're going to create the post login one. So let's go here, private string, boom, which equals to the base URL. What? That's not base URL. Yeah, this is it. Base URL plus /login /Steam, which is what we define as our endpoint. So there you go. Now the only thing we need to do here is going to be this, but let's complete here. So a player is what an object player is what we're going to get back. So let's do a JSON utility dot from JSON and tell him that, hey, we're expecting it to be a player in the as the response, and then we're going to return player. So it's either going to return player or it's going to return null. So all right, so that's not bad. Now we're going to go ahead and do the post request. So let's go into our server request, and just here we're going to do another public static async task, which is going to return a string because it's always returning JSON post request. Now we need the URL and the data. The data is going to be string data. So for now, we're posting only that format of data, but we could post other type of data, but that's just like easier to send it like this. This is going to be pretty similar. In fact, I'm just gonna copy paste this part. So using Unity Web Request here, it's a post, and we have URL and we pass in the data, and that post actually wants a dictionary string. That's what we have in our data. Then we await the send web request so that we get a response. If here we're going to change it a little bit. We're going to test it another way, which is network error. But as we said, that's what I would usually do, but this is the new way of doing it. So there we go. It's deprecated. We did the same same thing last time. So if there's a connection error, then we couldn't connect to the backend services. We return null. Otherwise, we return the JSON text. So here we connect to the backend. The backend kind of gets the ticket from Steam, send it to the login service, to the login player method. This one is just putting everything in a nice little package, asking the server request to send it to the server, and the player, and we get a player back, and then we return the player. So here, let's go ahead and say debug.log player logged in is this. We're gonna go and put a $sign here and say player.gamertag, and here it is. If everything goes well, we should see in the editor this time my real player, my real gamertag in my Steam account, and it should say here, yeah, my gamertag. All right, so that says that. Okay, so we're gonna fix a couple mistakes that I made. So first is the request library that we use in our Steam service to communicate with Steam wasn't imported, so you can add it to your requirement .txt, and then we're going to do pip install -r and a requirement.txt. So it's going to install that library. So most of them are already satisfied, but it's going to install the one that we don't have. So collecting request to, so it's installed it. Another thing that I forgot is that we're going to go in the project in our Steam app ID. By default, when you open this, you have only the default ID, which we're going to go ahead and paste our app ID. Here I made a small typo in the LoginController. Object here should have an S at the end right here. Also, I forgot that we renamed this, but it's not. These are the fields that are in our controller, so in our model. So it should be Steam ID and gamertag. So let's go back into the LoginController. Steam ID. Oops, sorry. Steam ID will be Steam ID. Steam ID here, and gamertag takes a capital letter. Back in the Steam service, I did another typo here. It should be response. And the last thing we need to change here is that I forgot that we're not creating our client network manager anymore at this point. We are going through the main menu. So I moved everything that was in here into our main menu. So if I go into main menu here, on player start, I commented out the code we had before, because if you're using Steam authentication, you don't need that anymore. And I just call the connect to backend that I moved right down here with the system import. And then I do the exact same thing. It's the exact same method. I just moved it into the main menu, because right now, whenever the client starts, it moves to the main menu. So I call the connect to backend, and I move the debug.log. And the connect to backend function is down here. Now in our Visual Studio Code, now that we fixed all the little typos that I did, we can go into the run debug. First, let's put a breakpoint here, and just so that it breaks and we can kind of go through line by line, and we can start it. So you should be able to start it. It should start on our usual port. So now we're going to go into Unity right here. Clear the console and start that. So that's gonna do our usual flow. So it's gonna detect that we're a client, and it's gonna move us to the main menu, and the main menu is gonna call the backend. And there it is, the backend's right here. I got a breakpoint here, so we should receive our ticket, which is right here, like it's a big chunk of data. So we're gonna go in here, So let's go into login service. You can do that. Steam API key. This is from the getEnv. This is the one that we put into our thing. So it's gonna put it in the parameter, send it, and we get a response. So if you hover response, you can see all the things that you have in the response. You can already see that the status code is that. That's the tech that we received that you still have in also in content. Param result okay, so that's good. We're gonna go ahead and do this. Response to JSON, this, and then you can see that in the JSON right here, we have our response okay with the Steam ID. So now if I go like this, we have a Steam ID. So we're gonna query the database, which it shouldn't find anything because we don't have a player yet. So yes, it's none. So it's gonna create it. So it's gonna ask Steam, do our second call with the Steam API key and our Steam ID. It's gonna call. The response is gonna go through. We're gonna decode it. We check if players is in response. So if we go into that JSON here in response, we see that there's a player and it's an array. So it should be fine. There we go. And then we want the persona name, which is the Steam gamer tag. So for me, it's SnappyDoo. So since the player was none, it means SnappyDoo didn't exist in our database. So we're going to create it, save it, and then return it. So if we go back to Unity, we can see here player logged in SnappyDoo. And there it is for the Get Steam User Info video. I hope your brain is not hurting too much. That was a lot of new concept, a lot of new things to learn, actually, like how we organize a little bit more of a backend, how you actually make requests from the Unity game to the server that makes a request himself to Steam, and how you pass information and all of that. So congratulations, this was a really hard video. So I hope you guys liked it. Obviously, like this is kind of the bulk of what it is to have a content server. You usually are kind of an abstraction layer for your game. So your game calls you and you call the different person that needs that hold the information you want to have. So yeah, so we're gonna do a lot of that. But yeah, I hope you liked it. I hope all worked out for you. If you like the video, please like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.